Welcome back to People Analytics. I'm your host, Lindsay Patton. Today I have with me Deborah Dash, who is the Human Resources Director at Unlimited Biking. Welcome, Debra.
Thank you.
So I always like to ask this question at the beginning of every podcast. Who are you? What do you do? And why you do it? Why do you do it?
So I'm a human resources professional. I've been in human resources for about 30 years, and I've worked at lots of different types of companies. Some that have real products, some are technology based, some are entertainment, and I have specialized in the last couple of years in emerging companies and in the tech space and startups. And I do it because I love it. I get to have an impact every day with the people that I work with. I'm able to coach and mentor and to see people develop and to become really not just technically good at their job, but actually good at being the managers that they need to be.
Yeah, that's so important. And one thing I really, really like about your mindset in people management and people leadership is that you view companies and organizations as a living organism. So can you explain that?
So I think that in order to understand, yes, because I think when you have an organism is very complicated and has lots of different functioning parts, and so companies are very much the same way, and they very much operate according to the people who are in them, the people that are running them, and the people that are managing them. So, in order to really understand the culture, I think instead of being someone who sits in an office, you really have to be out and be involved with the groups that you're working for, and that's something that I've always been a big advocate of, is getting out, walking around, and becoming a part of the teams that you work with.
Now, I know that you like going to departmental meetings because it's an opportunity for you to observe. So what do you learn from in those meetings?
So when you go to the meetings, when I go to meetings, I'm very interested. I go pretty much as an observer. So I go to see who participates, when they participate, how they participate. It gives me a really good idea of how a manager is managing and how individuals are, how they're viewing their own position within the groups that they're in. There are different management styles and there are different ways of soliciting opinions and soliciting information. And it helps me also when I guide managers to be able to sit down with them and tell them that what my observations are, and to maybe help them be better listeners, better solicitors of information. And I think that's very helpful in creating not just great teamwork, but a great outcome for the particular group.
Yeah, and one thing that comes up as a topic on this show is being a good active listener and how important it is when you are a people leader. So what do you talk about with the managers and some tips on how to be better listeners?
So I think that when I sit down with a manager, I'm interested in what their background is, what their mentoring has been, and what their experience has been. And then to help them bring into focus, a little sharper focus, what it is about their leadership that that's either something I think is very effective, because it's always good to lead with the positive, or something I think that might be done a little differently. And I'm not saying that they're doing it wrong. I'm just giving them a different way of looking at, or a different way of approaching the groups that they work with or the individuals they work with. In many companies, you have people that come from different, not just different backgrounds, but different cultural experiences, where there are different expectations based on gender or seniority. And those are things that I think that it's important to pay attention to in order to be able to make people feel comfortable enough to not just have a seat at the table, but to have a voice in the room, which I think is much more important.
Yeah, so I know that you're also fascinated by the culture in an organization. So do you have any best practices or, strong cultures that you've seen throughout your career?
Yes, and I think that culture is always something that is primarily set at the top and through the managers, and then it filters down. So the people that are attracted to work at the company self-select to come and work at that company, and so they're attracted by the leadership and by, I think, strong leaders have very strong points of view, but they don't always express them out of the box. But they have certain expectations and certain uh, boundaries and parameters that they'll set in order to make people, look at things, to communicate. If you have a manager that expects that everybody's going to participate, then I think you have a much better group, a much better interaction.
Mm-hmm. And I know one part of culture that is really important to you is creating a culture of growth and improvement. So, can you explain that?
Yes, I think that when you start working for a company, you come in and you're really learning what the business is and learning how to do your job. But I think you're also looking at some other things. And what are the opportunities that there are presented for you to learn more, to develop as not just your skill set, but your managerial set. So it's a question of where are you going? And although you may not be looking for a particular slot or a title, you're looking to see how big that platform is going to be for you, in terms of what's going to be made available to you. Everybody likes to learn. Everybody is basically curious, I think. So it's, does the culture of the company permit that? Do they encourage curiosity? Do they allow you to step out of your lane and participate? And if they do, they're going to have a much richer culture for that.
Yeah. And I love that you mention it because I feel like we historically think of work success and happiness of, getting fancy titles or promotions when it can really just be, incorporating something new or tweaking something or giving an opportunity.
Yes, and sometimes being given an opportunity to do another job at the company that you're in. So I think always having those channels of communication open, the doors, as they say, always open, and to be looking. I think part of my job is also to look at people and to see what they're doing and see if I see something where they might not have thought of, looking somewhere else in the company, but saying, how about trying something like this? Or you have a very strong aptitude, or you have a talent in a certain department. Is that something you might be interested in exploring?
Mhm. So, how do you encourage professional development at your organization? Are there opportunities for continuing education or courses or even in house opportunities?
So in the past, yes, and I think courses are great, and I think that that's very important to make, not just courses that are available to me or that I know about, but courses that people will bring to me that they have found. I think part of it, I think the most important part is just having people that are observant and are encouraging, and look at your strengths and try to give you more responsibility in areas where you seem to be excelling or have an interest. So I think it's letting go for managers. It's letting go and allowing employees to go up to try different things and to see how those things work out. and to be supportive of the of things that your employees or things that the staff are doing that may not have been done before, may not have been looked at before.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know part of your passion for professional development involves diversity. So tell me a little bit about that.
So, as I said, I've been doing this for quite some time, and I always thought that I was a pretty much blind when it came to interviewing. I looked at people's backgrounds in a more in a complete way to look at where they've gone to school, or what they studied, what their first job was, what they were doing now, how they moved in their career. And I thought I was pretty good about being able to be very open, and to look at a lot of different possibilities, and to also look at someone's journey in their life as a more complete picture. And then someone at an interview once asked me what I would do to spearhead a diversity program in their company, and I really didn't have a good answer for it. So I realized when I couldn't answer that question that I needed to learn a lot more, and that I really wasn't. I didn't know as much as I thought, or I wasn't as I didn't know as much as I thought I knew, about diversity. So I started taking online courses everywhere that I could find one, and I sat through a lot of diversity training, from beginning to more advanced courses, and that's talking about more process. And I really learned a lot about myself and about things that I may have been doing and very possibly was doing that were not conscious, but were um, not where I wanted to be, and not the person that I wanted to be, uh, as an HR person.
That's really, really awesome. The self reflection you showed is really, really. I respect that so deeply, because it can be difficult to look inward and admit to yourself, "Oh, I don't know as much as I thought." So how did you navigate kind of that humbling moment?
Uh, I became much more aware, not just of what I looked at, because it's not always what you see on the page. It was, for me, um, being aware of what I heard. And in looking at a candidate, might have thought that I was low key and friendly and informal, and that was getting the best interview out of them. But I wasn't really looking to see from my perspective whether I was more comfortable with certain candidates. Did I have an easier time talking to women, to men, to people in my age group, to people that went to my school? Did I, those things I ever, had never entered my mind, that there might be some kind of a subconscious camaraderie, if you will. And so I became much more aware of that, um, and realizing that it wasn't just being friendly or open or nice, but it was being more aware of my own interaction with candidates.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's so important because as humans, we naturally want to find similarities and connect with people with similarities. So you mentioned, went to the same school. There's a similarity that is a really intimate one. You had some of your most important years in school.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that's very, very true. That as I look back, and you asked me about reflection, I thought, Yeah, I could definitely think of instances when I absolutely, loved a candidate, thought they were great, and then looked back and said at their resume and said, "Oh, I think they were great. They were terrific. I should have really been supportive of them and recommended them." But I think a lot of that may have come from me as much as from them. So I'm trying to keep myself out of my interviews, and let be more comfortable, and to give me the signals that will tell me what will make them more comfortable. Some people don't like, the informality. Um, it's much more a fine tuning, my what I do, in order to have a candidate really show me who they are, and not for me to direct them as to who they should be.
Yeah, yeah. And so you mentioned there are like kind of cues that you can tell what kind of experience you think that they'll like during the interview stage. Can you share some of those?
Well, when I interview people, I know that resumes don't always have personal details on them, but sometimes people will list an interest or something they've done. And so many times I'll open my interviews talking about that, so that they are talking about not just giving me rote what they've done or what they've learned or what they've told other interviewers, but to show me a little of their personality, and what it is that makes them tick, what motivates them. And I think once somebody feels comfortable in that situation, or talking about something they really enjoy, they really love, then it's much easier to pivot into their work experience and to find out how that how those experiences or that experience has informed the choices that they've made about their career, about the jobs they've taken, about the jobs they've liked, about the jobs that they didn't like, about management styles, whether if they are going to interview for a management position, how that's influenced them, and if they're coming in a lower position, what, as a starting out in their careers, what it is that will make them successful. Uh, I do think that everybody has an answer for those questions, but maybe we've just never asked them.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that question that you were asked about what do you do for diversity? And so has the answer changed?
Um, yes, I think in terms of looking at what we've been impacted so much by COVID, and so most people were at home for a very long period of time. So a lot of the interactions that we had on a daily basis with our coworkers just didn't happen anymore, and a lot of the interactions that we had online were very forced. I think everybody had a bingo game or a trivia night, or name that tune, and it did get kind of old, and it did get kind of a little bit sad after a while, and participation definitely lagged. So now that I'm mostly hybrid in my jobs. We look for things to do that are much more genuine. Like we might get coffee in the morning and come in a little bit, say, hey, everybody come in a few minutes early, we're just going to sit around and have our coffee and our bagels or whatever together. And I think that that's a way um, to encourage people to learn about the people that they work with. It's a time for informal conversation. um, you learn so much more about people. I've also done lunch and learns, or I guess we've called them lunch and learns, but they are more like, the way we had them organized at one of the companies I worked for was that we Anybody could get up and talk. Every week we asked somebody if they would want to get up and talk about what they did. And it didn't have to be on a work project, and it didn't have to be on, their, something that was really germane to what our business was. Um, we encourage people to get up and talk about the different things that they did when they were not at work, and we learned a lot. I think about, people had all kinds of different interests. Somebody had tried to climb Mount Everest. That was probably the most extreme one. People were sneaker collectors. So, and because we did have such a diverse bunch of people, we had a lot of diverse topics that people brought up. So that's another way of being able to appreciate somebody else's um, culture. I come from a generation where people don't collect sneakers. Uh, and it was a new insight for me into something that motivated somebody else.
Yeah. Did you notice any relationships change or evolve after having those opportunities to connect?
Yes, I think that one of the most important thing that came out, that one of the most important things I think in general that comes out when you uh, have a group of people that are very, very different, and come from different backgrounds, is when you start talking to them and learning about them, you learn about maybe a different way to approach. There are many people who come here that are first generation, um, new immigrants, or maybe people that came from a different state, that from a different didn't come from New York City. So I think it gives you insight into different approaches that can be successful in working with people, so that not everybody has to approach everything the same way. And being able to respect that, and um, uh, to be able to have somebody, to be able to talk to someone and have them in a way that you might not have approached them before, um, it can be very helpful as well.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for you too for bringing that up, because when we think about diversity, we think about, initiatives or trainings, and it really, some of it can really just be as simple as get to know your coworkers, like find out, who they are and what they bring to the table.
Yes, and I think that um, we do, because and it we are in New York, so we see, um, we are kind of a big, um, I guess we have people from all over the place. They come here to go to school, to get, and we don't really, we live in such a big country that our perception of our borders are so wide that don't, unless people are coming into our space, we don't really have the opportunity to go everywhere. If we could travel everywhere in the world, and we could see different countries and learn different countries and experience different countries, but we can't. It's impossible to do all of that. So sometimes it's just good to know that there are um, different ways of uh, being, or different ways of addressing things that are different in different countries. Some are more proper, some are less proper. um, some are more formal, some are more informal. In some places, women are not encouraged to speak up, or to speak out, and so being able to understand that, we have a workforce that does need to be uh, that needs to be treated individually, I guess, is the best way to put that. And make sure that, you know uh, we're not steamrolling over them because they're quieter, or because they're more proper or respectful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Deborah, this has been such a great conversation, and I'm so happy you're able to be on the show and talk about, diversity and connecting. Before we wrap up, is there anything that I missed or you would like to add?
Um, I think that we're very, at least for me, I think that being in a workforce that's multi generational, that's multicultural, that's got gendered diversity. I think that those are the companies that I've liked working in the most and had actually the most fun in, um, because it's you really get to be um, yourself and to be accepted. Um, and that's, I mean, you spend so much time at work. You want it to be someplace where you're happy and where you feel joy. And I think diversity does do that.
Oh, that's such a brilliant thing to end on. Thank you for that. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
They can connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to connect with me. I have a LinkedIn account, uh, and I'm happy to talk to anyone or connect with anyone who would like to connect with me.
Awesome. Well, if you or anyone you know is like Deborah who wants to foster more diversity in the workplace, email me, Lindsay at StaffGeek.com. Thank you for listening to StaffGeek's People Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay Patton, and I'm always looking to interview leaders who put people first. If you or someone you know lead with a people-first mindset, please email me at lindsay@staffgeek.com. That's LINDSAY at staffgeek.com. If you want to take things a step deeper and understand your organization's true culture DNA, I encourage you to take StaffGeek's free culture assessment. Just head to staffgeek.com and click the button that says Free Culture Assessment. Thanks again for listening.